Hollow point tips, 3 clips and a gat, 45 caliber in my backpack. Only Will remembers that back when Josh was on her ass and he tried to get his clap. Now Will's at Amici's and now I'm at my pad, rolling up a joint and I'm trying to kick back, surrounded by people that don't give a damn about shit except cash and the fame in my hands, bashing your face with my hands.
So first off, I have this kick and I put it on every beat, so every 8 beats, so it adds a nice sort of flow to it. Then I added the snare on the offbeat, and then you get this, and it's quite a simple beat to be honest. And then the hats on every offbeat, even but more frequent. And to add variance now, you can add all kinds of sounds. I use the cymbal, so I have this is my one cymbal, and then I have another cymbal, and this just makes the beat more interesting, you know. And then to make the snares more stand out more, you can add a layer of a clap usually, and make sure you EQ all of this. I'll talk about that afterwards. So with the claps, the snare will sound way more full. Also, I added reverb on the claps so that it adds more sort of authenticity to the beat. This is sort of a reply and answer the cymbal and the reverb. It keeps the beat more interesting as well. So once you've got that sorted, all you need is these instruments really. You can find any kick you want, any snare you want. Just make sure they sound good together. So now for the loop, this is the most important part. You can usually find free loops online. I use Splice, it's subscription based, and then you can get loops. But yeah, I'll show you the loop that I found, this one. That's with a filter on, but without the filter. I also added sidechain to make it more catchy. That's without the sidechain. Then I layered that with this melody. And to make sure it doesn't clash, I panned it from left to right. This also just makes it more interesting. Then of course the piano. I added a lot of effects to this. I removed a lot of the low end and reverb. This was to make sure it wouldn't clash with the loop. And then I also added this sort of shout in the background. And it just keeps it exciting again. So the beat as a whole sounds like this. So I'll go into now the effects I use to make the mix more clean. So for the kick, I just added one EQ. I removed the high end, removed some of the low end, and then added some more on the bass EQ area. This makes just the kick more powerful and make sure that doesn't clash with other instruments. So yeah, you might want to copy this. This isn't the same for every kick, but usually this is the low end here cut is the same. So yeah. For the snares, I removed the low end instead so it doesn't clash with the kick, and then I added high end to make it more catchy and noticeable. Some reverb add some more liveliness to it. The wet knob is quite low though, so keep that in mind. You don't want to put it too high, otherwise it will just make the mix sound very mushy. You can always use a sound goodizer. Don't use it on the kick. Low end instruments it tends to mess up with, but high end it's pretty good. You want to drag it around here somewhere, and then it just makes it sound nicer. Like originally the snare sounds like this, but then if you add the sound goodizer, you can just hear that it's slightly better. The hi-hats, I added just EQ, obviously cut the low end off. I cut some of the high end so it's less sort of annoying, because sometimes if you make the high end too loud it gets really irritating to the ear. So I cut some off there. And then also I added a chorus. This is really not necessary, but it just adds, you can hear that it's sort of changing frequency. It adds some more variance to it. So for the first cymbal, I just removed the high end here and the low end and kept the mid. This is to clean it up, because the other frequencies, these you can't hear, but there's still some, you know, trash frequencies which end up over there, so you can cut them out. Clap, same story again, remove the low ends, keep the high ends. It's very similar to the snare, and then you stack this up with the snare on the same beat, unless you want to do something else, I guess. And then add reverb to the clap and the snare, and you basically get this really nice sound from it. It's really good. Reverb, I like having an offbeat sound effect percussion instrument, and I like to make it stereoized so that you get it in all the way at the sides. It kind of livens up the beat and makes it feel more full. Again, cut the low end just like a snare. You can raise the high end a bit if you want, but if you've already got a lot of high end instruments, it's best not to. It just makes the mix more mushy. Sound goodizer again, and yeah, I put that on the offbeat, I believe. Yeah, here it is. So if you hear it with the whole thing, you can't really hear it, but it just makes it more full again with the reverb. Reverb fills, mixes up. Don't put too much though. The F quiet, yeah, that's an instrument I used. Either way, that's the all the percussion instruments. So for the loop, I added a lot of effects. First off, I removed the high end. This is different for every loop, but like you can't just copy this. But I can tell you the steps you have to do to make sure your loop is sort of cleaned up and doesn't mess up the mix. So first off, you want to add an EQ on the first rack, and you want to cut out frequencies you cannot hear. So the frequencies here you can't hear, and so there's no point keeping them, so you can cut them out like this. The high-end frequencies you can hear, but it would be covering too much of the mix, hence why I cut it out. So you want to cut out some high-end usually on your loop. It adds a nice dark sort of tone to it as well. Then I added some nice reverb, the venue preset, which you can get here. Presets, show preset. Sound goodizer I turned up a lot, but then I reduced the volume a lot of the sample, I believe. Yeah, here I reduced the volume to around 30% to compensate for the really high sound goodizer. You don't want to put it this high though, you usually want to keep it down here where my mouse is right now. I added a low pass, but I added automation low pass so that it switches up. So at some points there's low pass, and sometimes, and it's sort of it adds more variance, keeps the beat exciting, makes your listener keep listening to it. I also added some sidechain. I used this plugin, Kickstart. It's very good actually, very simple to use as well. That's what adds that kind of bounce to it. And then I removed some frequencies here, these really irritating ones, so you can hear, you might want to turn down your volume. can hear those really, really loud screeching sort of noises. You can kind of dip those out like this. So what you got to do is turn down these knobs on the BW and then sweep. So you basically hold it and then you drag it across till you hear it, and then once you hear it, put it down a bit, like 6 decibels is usually alright. You can see in the top left always the values right now. So yeah. Next up for the beat, the final thing as well that I forgot to mention is you might want to pan some of the instruments. So, for example, my cymbal and my clap have clashing frequencies. They have the same frequency. You can see it here. They overlap. So what you want to do is you want to put them in different, pan them in different areas. So yeah, the cymbal and the hi-hat, I put the hi-hat in 50% to the left and the cymbal 50% to the right so that they don't clash. Of course you don't have enough space for everything, so yeah, my clap and my cymbal are clashing, but you just gotta make sure they're not too loud. So yeah, usually you want to layer the loop with other loops as well, such as this melody loop that I have, and a piano. Alright, next up, for my mastering, I show you how I've done it. I have basically I put on the first rack, you put on this EQ and you do the preset 30 hertz to 18 kilohertz cut. You can't hear these frequencies, hence why you cut it out. Then I added the Fruity Wave Shaper. Everyone has it in their Fruity Loops. And then I did presets and went soft saturation, and I lowered it to around 15%, yeah, on here. Then I added some fruity bass boost, 97 hertz. It starts off at like 43, and then I added some more bass. It makes the mix sound a lot better. Make sure you don't put it too high though, because if you do, the mix will become really mushy again. A sound goodizer, usually all the other ones are pretty crap, and then leave it down here. Stereo enhancer, turn it a tiny bit, otherwise the mix becomes really horrible to listen to actually. I'll show you what it sounds like. So yeah, you don't want to put that too high, it sounds really crap otherwise. Yeah, I used a Juicy Fattener plugin. This costs money, so it's not necessary, but it just makes the mix sound way more full. Makes it there'll be less. Everything will sound the same sort of volume. It levels all the volumes. It's quite nice. Maximus. This one's quite important. You can make the different frequencies. You can adjust the different frequencies. So for the low end, I merged it 100%. So it sounds like this unmerged. But then if you merge it, it sounds a lot cleaner, and this will make your mix sound better as well. For the mid, you might want to add a tiny bit of separation, but it's not necessary because you already have separation on this one. Stereo enhancer. High as well, 10% is usually alright. Then on the master, you can add some saturation. You drag it 30% to the left and 6.5 decibels to the right. It's quite nice. Makes it more exciting again. Okay, this is the soft clipper. You want to usually turn the knobs around to this, and it basically just adds some distortion at the cost of making. Yeah, you make the mix louder without becoming mushy like a limiter would do, but you add some distortion at the cost. So it's your call how much you want to turn the post meter, but yeah, I have it around 80%. Okay, so this is the limiter I was talking about. You want to again, turn the ceiling to -2 or -1. You can see it down here, -0.1, -0.2. You can see it down here. The attack, you can turn that down if you want. It adds some more distortion if you do, but it makes it louder. The gain, I have it around 7 decibels. You basically want to I'll turn this down. Okay, as my beat is playing now, you can see that the mix is around here. So I could actually turn up my limiter until the majority of the mix lies just below this green line. You want to get the majority of the mix below this green line. These stabs, that's my kick. I make it really loud so it's punchy, but this does make the mix slightly more dirty. But I actually want this effect because every kick adds this nice distortion sort of thump, and it makes the beat feel way more bouncy and I guess catchy in a way. So yeah, don't mind that, but look at the other frequencies. They're around about just under the green line. You don't want to make sure they go above, because otherwise you get this horrible noise, which you really don't want. So yeah, that's how I do my mastering and mixing. So yeah, I also changed up the beat a bit here. I added a hi-hat on every second step, added a kick just before the second kick, and that's about it, I think, just to add more variance.
Hollow point tips, 3 clips and a gat, 45 caliber in my backpack. Only Will remembers that back when Josh was